All right. So, the course teaches that there never was, in reality, a separation. It's an illusion of separation. But there was a breakdown in communication between our conscious mind, our ordinary conscious mind, and the mind of spirit. And so we're going to be focusing on what does it take to restore that communication. And one of the things that we read about towards the end of chapter 10 is the idea of just taking a moment in your day to acknowledge the creator as our source, to open our mind and turn our thoughts in that direction and acknowledge creator as source. So that's a improvement of communication. In this session, we're going to be looking at improving communications with the Holy Spirit. Well, hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader for this session is Julie C. Before we go into reading the new material in section 2, I wanted to go back a paragraph from the previous section. Julie, I don't know if that's something that you can see easily enough to read. Okay, so our reader for this session is Julie C. Thank you, Julie.
You are asked to trust the Holy Spirit only because He speaks for you. He is the voice for God, but never forget that God did not will to be alone. He shares His will with you. He does not thrust it upon you. Always remember that what He gives, He keeps, so that nothing He gives can contradict Him. You who share His life must share it to know it, for sharing is knowing. Blessed are you who learn that to hear the will of your Father is to know your own. For it is your will to be like Him, whose will it is that it be so. God's will is that His Son be one and united with Him in His oneness. That is why healing is the beginning of the recognition that your will is His.
Mm-hmm. So in this program, healing is the beginning. Healing occurs through forgiveness, the practice of forgiveness, of letting go your fixed viewpoint, your fixed judgment, assessment of the world, of people, of yourself. You're being willing to let that go and have it exchanged with another viewpoint sponsored by the Holy Spirit. So that's how we heal. And that process entails listening to the guidance of the Holy Spirit, which is, in fact, our intent in this session that we'll be reading. So it begins with healing. It evolves and progresses by increased listening and following the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and ultimately results in the recognition that our purpose, our function, our deepest desire is to do the will of the Creator, that love rules overall, and that we're fully on board with that plan. So with that, we'll move into section 2.
If sickness is separation, the decision to heal and to be healed is the first step toward recognizing what you truly want. Every attack is a step away from this, and every healing thought brings it closer. The Son of God has both Father and Son, because He is both Father and Son. To unite having and being is to unite your will with His, for He wills you Himself, and you will yourself to Him, because in your perfect understanding of him, you know there is but one will. Yet when you attack any part of God and his kingdom, your understanding is not perfect, and what you really want is therefore lost to you.
As Julie was reading, I was remembering on a boat, they have a throttle. And it's usually very simple. You push it forward to rev up the engine, and you pull it all the way back for the engine to stop. And well, I don't know why I thought of that, but as she was reading, I saw it as a metaphor for when we take the step forward towards forgiveness and healing, we take a step forward towards our true will. But when we reverse direction, every attack is a step away from this. And in that sense, your mind is like that throttle. You can push it forward and move forward with your mind, with your choices, or you can pull it back and go nowhere, come to a halt. It's a step away from healing. And so it's, and before mind training, we did not realize that our mind had this power, that it was all really in our, always was in our hands all along. There's something else that's mentioned here, and I really debated with myself whether or not to even bring it up, but I'm going to in a moment. I feel like it says to unite having and being is to unite your will with his, for he wills you himself. And you might not remember, but I recall Atisha making a comment some time ago where she said, it feels like I have a spirit, and I may be misquoting, but I got the gist of it. It feels like I have a spirit, but that not that I am a spirit, as if I contain one, but that's not what I am. And this really points to what is spoken about in the Course of Miracles as the distinction between having and being. And this is abstract because you cannot detect any of this with your senses. But it's the difference between the feeling that you understand. Okay, let's say I have the idea of peace in my mind. I understand peace is being without conflict. I understand that peace is the prelude to happiness. I understand all these things. But to be at peace is a different level, is to experience it wholeheartedly with all of myself. And so with the Course, they make reference to this distinction. So it turns out that in our progression, first we have an idea of what this to be at peace is. We have an idea of healing before we actually feel like we are a part of it, before it becomes a part of our experience. And so this is one of those things that can't be explained with words. It can only be experienced. I'm highlighting it for you so that you realize that we are all going through an experience between having and then progressing to uniting that having with a sense of being at peace. Heather?
It's similar, Jonathan, to the same difference between believing and knowing.
Mhm.
There's that subjective difference. All of a sudden, you believe it, and then you know it, and now it's completely different. Now it's now you don't just believe, it's different. Now you're convinced.
Yes. Yes. It's much deeper, much more profound. Thank you. Um, okay. What else? Oh, the other thing that we'll elaborate on more in a moment, is the notion of your perfect understanding of the Creator. And so to look back up for a second, clearly we do not start out with perfect understanding. In fact, the course and the workbook lessons emphasize I really don't know what anything is for. I really don't understand this table. I don't understand myself. I don't understand the meaning of love. That's our baseline confused state. And then as we let go of our convictions of the chaos and of guilt, we learn of forgiveness, we begin to understand. It's a imperfect understanding at first, and then what ultimately emerges is a perfect understanding. And this echoes what Heather just said, where there is but one will, not just believe or have the theory in your mind, hold the theory, but that there is but one will. Okay, we'll move on.
Healing thus becomes a lesson in understanding, and the more you practice it, the better teacher and learner you become. If you have denied truth, what better witnesses to its reality could you have than those who have been healed by it? But be sure to count yourself among them, for in your willingness to join them is your healing accomplished. Every miracle that you accomplish speaks to you of the fatherhood of God. Every healing thought that you accept, either from your brother or in your own mind, teaches you that you are God's son. And every hurtful thought you hold, wherever you perceive it, lies the denial of God's fatherhood and of your sonship.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to point out that first sentence because I'll frequently refer to this program as a progression, a learning journey, and it's certainly emphasized in many places. Here, the more you practice, the better teacher and learner you become. Clearly, it's a plan of progressing. It's not a plan of spiritual bypass. It's a plan of systematically undoing those beliefs that have held us back. And we might emphasize 95% of the program is undoing, is clearing the mind of what is not true. And then the Holy Spirit does the rest. So our efforts are just geared towards our willingness to let them go. Um, so, um, Also, I wanted to underscore now this idea of understanding and progressing in our understanding. And I got this really good footnote here. Healing is a lesson in understanding, and you progressive. It's an active process of internalizing and demonstrating the truth in your life as we practice the workbook lessons, for example. Those who have been healed by the truth serve as a witness to its reality. They become like a light, a carrier to the world. And when you're willing to count yourself among them, your own healing is accomplished, which demonstrates a shift in your understanding and a shift in your sense of identity and purpose. The Course would say it's a shift into the awareness of your true function. And so this progression along the axis of understanding, that's why we have these sessions, so that we can learn to progress in our understanding at least one aspect. This is not a workshop where we practice these things for hours, but we can begin to understand the terms and to recognize what is not true and what is true, and so that we can begin to feel comfortable and accept into our mind that these are the laws of creation. They make far more sense than anything that we had ever learned under the ego's guidance.
And denial is as total as love. You cannot deny part of yourself because the rest will seem to be separate and therefore without meaning. And being without meaning to you, you will not understand it. To deny meaning is to fail to understand. You can heal only yourself, for only God's Son needs healing. You need it because you do not understand yourself, and therefore know not what you do. Having forgotten your will, you do not know what you really want.
Mm-hmm. So, humbly speaking, let's start back at the baseline here, where we need healing because we don't understand the truth of our eternal and divine nature. We don't understand ourselves. I mean, Socrates pointed this out, know thyself, all those years back. It's still true that we do not understand that part of us which comes directly from the Creator. And if we don't understand that ourselves, then we don't know what to do, and we don't really have a clear vision of what we really want. This is another way of saying in the darkness we are without guidance. And that's not to say that people won't conjure up substitutes of what they want. Like, I want to be popular, or I'm not going to go through all the list here. I get myself in trouble. So all these things that we substitute, that we make into idols, they become wants that are not genuinely heartfelt. They're not a part of the core of our being. They're a part of a sense of filling an inner emptiness or a void that comes about by not understanding ourselves. So this is the major problem that has to be rectified. And when that's rectified, like a series of dominoes, everything else falls into place. So let's go back to how is that actually done, practically speaking. It comes back through an unconscious process of denying your divine nature. Let me further elaborate. Your divine nature has properties that come directly from the Creator. They are holy, they are loving, they are joyous, they are eternal, they are immutable, they are changeless. All those properties. Well, the human mind is apt to think of all those properties as not me. I'm not eternal, divine, immutable, perfect. The human mind is apt to deny those properties are a part of myself, yourself. And as a result of that unconscious denial of those divine properties, we get ourselves caught into a loop where that becomes normal to think that those things are outside of us and not part of us. And what the Course says is you cannot deny a portion or a part, a single attribute of yourself, because when you deny any one part of the totality of your wholeness, of your completion, you deny the whole thing. If you're separate from any one component of it in your mind, you believe you're separate, then that means you believe you're separate from all of it. And then once you separate from it in your mind, those attributes of the divine have no meaning to you. They're of no importance. They have to do with, they seem to the ego mind to have to do with religion or theology or something else, but not me. And being without meaning to you, you will not understand it. To deny meaning is to fail to understand. So this becomes circular very quickly, but it begins with an unconscious process of denying the attributes that we all received in the beginning with the original creation. The attributes that are a part of our divine inheritance, that unconscious belief that they don't describe my being. They describe something else, something that this is a false belief that I'm separate from. So to rectify all that is to undo that denial, to accept these attributes as a part of your eternal nature, and then having made room for them so that you're not attacking them or judging against them with your conscious mind, then you're actually inviting them in. And that's the beginning of rectifying the separation, the alienation. You begin to once again to understand what they mean. And having meaning, you realize they apply to you, and they have always been true. And so, well, I'm jumping a little ahead here. But this is really important. I would encourage you to come back to this paragraph and realize that it all begins with an unconscious sense of denial. It's an ignorance of not knowing that we truly are carriers of eternal light and life.
Healing is a sign that you want to make whole. And this willingness opens your ears to the voice of the Holy Spirit, whose message is wholeness. He will enable you to go far beyond the healing you would undertake. For beside your small willingness to make whole, he will lay his own complete will and make yours whole. What can the Son of God not accomplish with the fatherhood of God in him? And yet the invitation must come from you, for you have surely learned that whom you invite as your guest will abide with you.
Mm-hmm. So we just talked about how denial is actually a form of not believing in the totality, the completion, the union of all creation. It's a belief that has to do with something else. That's a nice theory, perhaps, but not applicable here. Well, healing, in the process of welcoming healing in your life, is an indicator, a sign that you want to return to your source, that you want to wake up to who you truly are, that you want to be whole once again. And this willingness to heal and to return opens your ears, your spiritual ears, to the voice of the Holy Spirit, which is the subject of this section. Opening your mind, your consciousness to the teachings of the Holy Spirit. And once you indicate your willingness, it does not have to be perfect. It can be just a childlike faith and that says, well, I've tried everything else. I've heard people say, I've tried everything else. This is my last shot at it. It can be a very simple willingness to turn towards Spirit. Well, Holy Spirit then, in her magnanimity, gives us the entire package. She gives us what goes far beyond the healing we would undertake. For beside our small willingness, the Holy Spirit lays her own complete willingness and makes your small willingness whole. Said in another way, our little willingness joins with the cosmic mind of the Holy Spirit and reunites with the willingness of the universe. It's no longer separate and trying to pull the load by yourself, but rather it's reuniting with the one mind. And when you do that, what can you not accomplish with the fatherhood of God in you? So the key and the basis for the title here, the invitation to healing, the key is the invitation must come from you. And I would submit that the invitation must come from you each day. Let's go a little further. Morning, afternoon, and night. Let's go a little further. With every encounter, you have to have at least some degree of recognition that you wish for the best to come forth in this encounter. And so I refer to this invitation as the soulful glance towards the Holy Spirit. It's not something you do with your eyes, but it's like your soul. You realize in an encounter with someone that your soul comes to bear in this relationship, that it's not just one ego talking to another ego, that your soul is come to bear. And when you do that, you become soul conscious in that moment, which enables you to realize the other person is a soul as well. And now you're oriented towards a miracle because you're conscious of your higher self. It's an invitation that must come from you.
The Holy Spirit cannot speak to an unwelcoming host because he will not be heard. The eternal guest remains, but his voice grows faint in alien company. He needs your protection, only because your care is a sign that you want him. Think like him ever so slightly, and the little spark becomes a blazing light that fills your mind so that he becomes your only guest. Whenever you ask the ego to enter, you lessen his welcome. He will remain, but you have allied yourself against him. Whatever journey you choose to take, he will go with you, waiting. You can safely trust his patience, for he cannot leave a part of God. Yet you need far more than patience.
So I'm going to tell myself here, while Julie was reading, I was paying attention to the chat messages, and there was a little technology thing going on there that I didn't understand. So I didn't hear most of what was said. So bear with me here while I fumble through. Um, and please feel free to interject your own thoughts here. The little spark becomes a blazing light that fills your mind so that he becomes your only guest. That's analogous to what I was saying when you do the soulful glance. It's just a small effort on our part to take a divine pause and remember that in this moment, I have a function that God would have me fill, that there is a purpose to this moment that I don't necessarily understand, but that I'm willing to play my part in this moment. It's a spark. Think of him ever so slightly, and that spark starts to blaze, not because of any power on your part, but because that's what the Holy Spirit is capable of doing. And so that is the essence of this program, is to think of him ever so slightly, especially in those moments where we need to show up with our best self, like in every encounter we have with another. And you can trust that the Holy Spirit will wait, even if you fail to do so for long periods of time. You can trust the Holy Spirit will continue to be there waiting patiently, for our Holy Spirit will never abandon us. Atisha?
What's heartening to me about this is that there is this combining of this like spiritual ambition to include the Holy Spirit in everything, along with just the regular old human thing of practice. You know, just like practicing the thing that I want to get good at. And this is something that I want to get good at. And it can feel sort of, I don't know, overwhelming or foreign or just sort of out of place, but simply because I haven't practiced it. Mm-hmm. And the more I practice it is then also the more that I'm actively surrendering and closing the door or turning my back on the ego and including higher power, Holy Spirit, and everything. So yeah, when you mentioned the soulful glance, I can't remember the first time that I heard it, but I haven't forgotten it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the practice, because this comes directly from the Course. The Course says our minds tend to respond to situations according to habits, cognitive patterns of thought. It's pretty easy to recognize your own mind if you're paying mind watching, how you're thinking similar thoughts each day, how you're responding to people in a similar way. You feel like you've got a read on them, or you know how you want to interact with them. And so we respond in the same way each time. Our mind develops these cognitive patterns, and the practice of the workbook lessons is about undoing the old patterns that were under ego's guidance and learning a new set of patterns that are under the Holy Spirit's guidance, until that new set of responses becomes habitual, and we do it without even thinking about it. It refers to this in the Course as you have not yet gotten to the point where you unconsciously respond in accordance with the Holy Spirit. And then I'm ad-libbing, but with further practice, you can get to the point where you unconsciously respond in accordance with Holy Spirit's guidance. Susie?
Yeah, and to follow what Atisha said, it's so comforting to know like that the Holy Spirit's there no matter what. So what I do is I like, oops, forgot you were there. Oops, I let the ego in. Like, yeah, it's no big deal because it's not completely habitual yet. So much better than it was. And really, that's what I say. Oops, and that's it. And then Holy Spirit is right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it because in your oops, there's no self-condemnation in there. It's just a playful little, oh, I forgot, but now, so there's no judgment moving right to, but now I'm awake, I'm returning again without getting caught up in the how long it, where one laments their failure to remember. So I love that attitude. It's a playful, happy dream that we are encouraged to have. Oops, I forgot, but I know now. Thank you, Susan. Heather?
Yeah, I love this. I just realized the progression of it, how it becomes habitual. And then the Course says it becomes natural.
Yes.
So it becomes a part of who we are. We're not even having to practice it so much. It just becomes who we are. It's a natural part of who we are.
Yes. Yes. It is part of our divine nature. It's another way of understanding what Heather is referring to is the light within us has divine attributes, a divine nature, which is natural. It's part of creation. And those attributes begin to shine forth when the old habits of guilt and fear fade away and we've consistently practiced the new habits that the Holy Spirit guides us, then everything become our true nature shines through. This is the principle in chapter 1. Miracles are natural. When they don't occur, something has gone wrong. Noel?
For me, also, his second line, his voice grows faint in alien company. That alien company is the ego, and I have to make a very conscious decision to turn away from the ego and to be quiet, to get very quiet so I can listen for the Holy Spirit. And every morning now I have a prayer that says, I ask, I listen, I obey.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for reminding us, Noel, that divine pause is about restoring our inner quietness, where we're no longer said in psychological terms. They often refer to the monkey mind or the impulsive mind that's just responding to stimuli without any conscious select discrimination. Well, quietness is what offsets all that frantic, impulsive, indiscriminate response. Inner quiet, which is an attribute of inner peace. Thank you. So, Julie, is patience enough?
Yet you need far more than patience. You will never rest until you know your function and fulfill it. For only in this can your will and your Father's be wholly joined. To have him is to be like him, and he has given himself to you. You who have God must be as God, for his function became yours with his gift. Invite this knowledge back into your mind, and let nothing that obscures it enter. The guest whom God sent you will teach you how to do this, if you but recognize the little spark and are willing to let it grow. Your willingness need not be perfect, because His is. If you will merely offer Him a little place, He will lighten it so much that you will gladly let it be increased. And by this increase, you will begin to remember creation.
Mhm. So let's just recall real quick some of the things that we believe we've read in the workbook lessons and in the text. One, God has a plan. We, being part of His creation, are an essential part of that plan. We have a role to play. That plan is for our good, for our healing, and for our wholeness. And our part in that plan is referred to as our function. Well, you will never rest. Noel talked about inner quiet and inner peace. You will never rest until you know your function. And it's not enough to just think about your function. We must also fulfill it. So, for another, we demonstrate it in the way we live our lives. For only in this can your will and the Father's will be wholly joined. Said another way, God's will is for us to function in accordance with the plan. And that the promise is that all the attributes embedded in our nature and our plan shine forth when we fulfill our function in God's plan. That is inner peace and happiness and healing for ourselves and others are natural. Miracles are natural. And so His function, the function that God gave us, becomes ours. It was always, this is not new, by the way. This was intended from the beginning of all creation. In other words, the Creator knew all along that we would be a part of the plan and that we all have a function to fulfill and that we would need some help in Holy Spirit guidance to get us moving in the right direction. He knew that all along. And so our role is to let nothing that obscures this awareness enter into our mind. Again, 95% of the program is the undoing of the things that obscure our understanding or that inhibit our true divine nature. And so, how are we to get from our beginner status to the state where we know our function and fulfill it? Well, the Holy Spirit will teach us how to do this. All we need to do is begin with a little willingness, a little spark, and be willing to let it grow. It doesn't need to be a perfect willingness because the Holy Spirit's got all the willingness of all creation. You just merely need to offer Spirit a little place, and Holy Spirit will do the rest. What more? That I don't think it could be any simpler than that. And as we say, then have to do that on a regular basis and develop a new habit, and to the point that it becomes the basis, the motivation for your life to live a life of healing and wholeness. And so that we do so as a habit.
Would you be hostage to the ego or host to God? You will accept only whom you invite. You are free to determine who shall be your guest and how long he shall remain with you. Yet this is not real freedom. for it still depends on how you see it. The Holy Spirit is there, although he cannot help you without your invitation. And the ego is nothing, whether you invite it in or not. Real freedom depends on welcoming reality, and of your guests, only the Holy Spirit is real. Know then who abides with you, merely by recognizing what is there already, and do not be satisfied with imaginary comforters, for the comforter of God is in you.
So the reference here to imaginary comforters, they often become our fantasies, our idols, our ego wishes, things that addictions stem from these things. And it's an effort to substitute an imaginary comforter for the comforter of God, which is the Holy Spirit. Two more points here. This is worth memorizing, this line. Would you be hostage to the ego or host to God? This is a question you can ask yourself again and again. It seems to be applicable to every day. Are you willing to give part of your happiness, of your life, to be hostage to the ego? Or would you rather pause, remember, and choose again to be host to God? Just by asking the question, the answer is embedded in there. Of course, I would not want to be held hostage to the ego. Which brings up another point that we're not going to elaborate on in detail at this moment, but we will take it up again. The opposite of being a hostage is to be free. The idea here is far greater than the word freedom. And, oftentimes in a democracy, freedom has political connotations. Amongst liberals or progressives, freedom might have a social or moral connotation. We're not talking about that. We're talking about being free from the ego. And more importantly, what is the experience that is waiting for each of us when we become free? And I will suggest that there are levels or degrees of freedom. No doubt you're far more free now than you were before you encountered A Course in Miracles and practicing it. But there's an ultimate or a final freedom that they'll refer to as real freedom. Real freedom depends on welcoming reality, not the illusions of the ego, but divine reality. And where your guest of the Holy Spirit is understood to be the trustworthy guide of your life. And so we'll come back to this idea again, contrasting not so much to focus on being hostage to the ego, but to focus on what it means to become truly free, real freedom, complete freedom. So that will be taken up again. It'll be a theme that'll echo again and again, because the entire Course of Miracles is about freeing ourselves from the ancient prison of the ego. And what happens when you become free of that? You begin your journey back home to real freedom. So I did a little bit of a summary for some of the major thoughts that we encountered tonight. And words are imperfect, but these are some of the words that might describe that. You are free to determine who shall be your guest, who will be the comforter. Which comforter will you invite? An imaginary comforter or the comforter of God? That's a free will choice. Imaginary comforters do not satisfy your soul. They merely tease you with the idea of wanting something, and then after you've gotten it or consumed it, you're still left wanting. So where do we begin? The first steps are up towards healing, steps towards healing yourself and others, towards practicing healing, towards seeing yourself as a practitioner of healing, become a better, and with practice, we become better at it. We become better healers and better learners. But not as a result of our own guidance, but as a result of following inner guidance, which we must invite on a regular basis. And Noel mentioned it tonight. I need to be, and I find myself caught up in noise. I need to be quiet, take a divine pause, and glance towards the Holy Spirit. A little glance, a little willingness will light the divine spark. And this brings with that a pattern of inviting the comforter to guide us. And that brings a new sense of meaning and purpose and understanding, which is where we started out with, remember, we said that an unconscious denial of these things makes these ideas meaningless to the conscious mind. Well, a regular daily invitation to the Holy Spirit invites understanding into our mind. And then we begin to understand that we are a vital link in God's plan. So healing is the beginning of a journey that concludes in your knowing that your will is God's. That's as far as we're going to go in this session. It's such a simple program. Maybe I had to go through years of seeing it as complex and not understanding, but now I look at it as just a few things that anybody could do, but have to be done on a regular basis, as pause, be quiet, and invite the Holy Spirit in. So I want to thank you all for sharing in that message. Thank you, Julie, for reading. Thank you all for your attention. God bless you all. Namaste.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Namaste. Thanks, everyone.
Namaste. Good night.
Bye.
Peace and love.